And we're live. Hey guys, it's your girl Jay Sharon, and I have one of my favorite artists. And I have several friends of artists, so I don't need my illustrators beating me up because I love y'all too. But she is a painter. She is the owner of the Paint Factory. Her name is Amber Reynolds. I am so excited to have her on today. I think it's very. I was just telling Amber. It's crazy how we plan to talk about grief, and at the time I didn't have any grief.
Mm.
And now it's like fresh in my family, that I am actually working through grief. I think it is very interesting because um, I am transitioning into life coaching, but previously when I was doing therapy for students, like previously, like last week, um, a lot of them are struggling with losing a parent. So grief thing that I really feel like, and my last supervision with my supervisor, that's what she talked about was how are we handling grief over the holidays, over the new year, because grief is one of those things that is becoming more prevalent as we kind of move along. I mean, I think about even Betty White. Like, geez, man, this was the year we didn't bubble wrap her, right? And then we lost Betty White. So all the memes are talking about how it should have been the Queen and not Betty White. So Amber, I'm so excited to have you. Amber has a mobile and virtual. It's virtual, right? I'm
Yes.
getting Paint
Mhm.
Factory. So if you need a date night, you need an event, you need a team building activity because your people are probably tired of having happy hours at their desk. COVID, we are still in the thick of this. I mean, we may think as Americans we can just wish it away. That's what it feels like. But so far, we have not been able to do that. So if you need an event, you need a date night, anything like that, she creates these experiences using art. So tell us a little bit about art, how you kind of got into it, your business, and just tell us a little bit more about how you even came up with this concept, especially over the course of everybody kind of being at home.
So, one, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited. So I launched my business on my birthday, my 27th birthday, June 25th, 2020. And I started going to like sip and paints like years ago. I actually found a picture. I went to my first sip and paint in 2015. And I realized it was just so soothing, to paint because I've never been actual a painter. I'm a self-taught painter.
Wow.
So during when COVID hit, of course, a lot of people lost their jobs. I lost my job. So I was trying to I actually made a list of things I enjoy doing. I've been working since I was 15. So I wanted I wanted to find something that is not technically a job. It's something that I actually enjoy doing. So I made a list and I was like, you know what? I can really do this painting thing. Like it's so soothing and it's therapeutic. Art is therapy.
Yep.
And I'm really big on mental health. So I'm like, I know right now I can't afford a studio, especially with COVID. So why don't I just be mobile? So that's how I came up with the Paint Factory, a mobile sip and paint business. We bring the party to you. I do virtual parties, in person, and to go kits as well. Um, Pretty much do it all. And I also just started doing custom doormats. And so with my business, I have my sister Caitlin. She's 16. I'm sorry, she's 17 now. um, she does all of my canvases. She sketches everything out. She's my artist.
Nice.
So, I pay her. I'm teaching her about entrepreneurship and stuff. So, other than that, I just want to be able to bring this joy, that painting gives me to everybody else and comfort their homes during like the stress of what's going on in the world right now.
I think it's so interesting that you talked about losing your job in a pandemic because this was kind of a lot of people's story, getting laid off,
Mhm.
or getting your pay cut. In our case with therapy, because the kids weren't in school per se, the parents were like, "Oh, I don't need it." So we went from having tons of referrals to kind of some referrals to now the parents are realizing, although they're not in school, the kids need it more than ever. And so it's to the point
Yeah.
my company couldn't, we were burning out. So they couldn't even hire therapists quick enough. Like when I got ready to transition to life
Mhm.
coaching full time, they were like, "Oh yeah, 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 we've just hired this amount of therapists." And then last week it was like, "Yeah, we still don't have enough." Like the waiting list is like
Crazy.
and so I even am considering after a time opening up my own therapeutic practice. But I kind of like the flexibility of life coaching. It's a lot of protocols and structure because it's medical with therapy. So
Mhm.
I have teetered back and forth. My mentor jokes and talks about how she joked and talked about how the girl's going. She said, "I don't know why this girl keep running from trauma and therapy and working with people because that's what she's good at." But in this pandemic, it sounds like you created this space. Not only created this space, but use this to kind of work through some things. So art it's a whole modality called art therapy.
Mhm.
You, as a clinician, you could get a certificate or extra learning to teach how to use art. And of course, as clinicians, sometimes we use techniques like the basics, but because I've used it with my kids. No, I'm not certified in art therapy. I don't need y'all to come for me about my credentials. But I had small kids on my caseload, so the way that you talk to them or work things out is through art and through play. So I think that's
Mhm.
phenomenal that you were able to take something you love in the middle of losing your job and then creating
Crazy.
this viable business, and then you got your sister in on it. I think that is so cool. So talk to
Yes.
me a little bit, how did you started using artist therapy? So what kind of happened that got you into using art as a way to express yourself?
Honestly, one like during the pandemic, before I made it official, that's what I was going to do. I went, to the store and bought some canvases, and I was just like just painting.
Hmm.
And again, it's just so calming,
It is.
and soothing. You're just because with painting, you're really sitting there focusing on your work of art, right? And I feel like you're not thinking about anything else going on in the world. You're just focusing on this piece in front of me. And that's what's so cool about it because, when I see, I have my parties and just seeing people, they're like, oh, I don't know how to paint. I'm like, I promise at the end, you'll love it. When I tell you in the middle of the party, maybe like 15, 20 minutes in, get so quiet because everybody is focused and concentrating. I'm like, see, you don't think about nothing else that's going on outside of here that's stressing you out. Just, focus and enjoy, being in the moment right now.
Now, I remember earlier, not on this show, but when we were talking, you were talking about how you found it as a way to kind of cope with your grief. So, do you want to talk a little bit about how you linked working with art and using art to really work through your grief?
So with art, trying to get again with me painting, it just takes my mind off of everything else, and I can really just focus on what's in front of me. So that's really just the best way to explain it. Just it just takes my mind off of everything else, and I can really express myself through my painting. And I like to tell my customers, it's not about how I do my painting or the person next to you. It's about what you think is nice and what you think is unique and creative. Don't stress about like, oh well, theirs look really nice. No, like yours is nice too. So just focusing on being in the moment kind of helps because when with me dealing with grief, if I'm not busy or doing something, if I'm just sitting here, my mind, I start overthinking and I'll get anxiety because I deal with grief really bad with my granddaddy passing away in 2017. Even though it was 2017, it feels like it's still yesterday because honestly, his anniversary of passing is this month, the 25th of this month.
Wow.
And that, I hate how people tell me, oh, you'll be okay. Like, you get over it. Like, don't tell me that. Like,
Right.
you can't tell someone how to feel if you never experienced that exact feeling.
Right. And even if you have, let's talk about the fact that everybody has an individualistic grief process. For my students that
Exactly.
were grieving, a lot of them lost a parent, but it looked very different for each of them, down to
Hmm.
some of them were fine, some of them couldn't define their feelings, some of them knew exactly how they felt and didn't want to talk about it. I think you said something important about being present in the moment in dealing with
Yes.
grief, because I
Mhm.
think sometimes we call this mindfulness, and I don't get too deep into that because some of them, the mindfulness now, depending on whatever you practice, mindfulness may work for you. For me, I don't get too deep into some of the practices because I practice a different religion, and so I understand the concept. But I like the fact that in mindfulness, it talks about being present in the moment, feeling the moment. What does your body feel like in the moment? So Brene Brown gives the story of riding a bike, that she could feel her feet on the pedals. She could feel her hands in the handlebars, the wind on her face, and she's just literally thinking and processing about the feelings that are coming at her in that moment. And I think sometimes with grief, just having those moments to kind of ground yourself, be present in the moment, and then allowing yourself to grieve how you want to grieve. Grief
Yeah.
is very, very individualistic. I mean, even to the point where there are several different ways therapists teach people to grieve. I stopped using, what is it called? The stages of grief, because they
Mhm.
really, when they did some research and digging, they were originally created for if you were going through an addiction and they saw that they were applicable to grief or you could apply them to grief. But I started using the task of mourning because they looked more like what my kids and students were going through, of adjusting to a new normal and realizing this person isn't here. And so I think, you know, in the African American community, when you talk therapy, you talk grief, you talk about getting support, it's very, very hard for us to, one, um, express what we need, right? And then two, go move our bodies to go get help. So, what kind of pushed you to say, I have to do something? I have to do something different. Whether people are telling me to grieve this way or not, I got to find my own process. Was there anything that kind of challenged you to decide this was how you were going to grieve?
So honestly, when he first, okay, it's because it's like a timeline how I remember everything.
Mhm.
Um, so Thanksgiving, what in 2016 was the first time like I saw my granddaddy. Like he was like in the rehab center,
Mhm.
and that was like hard for me. And that was on Thanksgiving, seeing him that sick. Then on Christmas, December 25th, that was my last time hearing my granddaddy's voice. I went to hospital and see him. And then January 25th, he passed away. And it's crazy how I even knew that he passed. I was driving and I got a feeling. It was like, go see your granddaddy. Because at this point, he was in the hospice now.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, okay. So I was in the middle of the expressway. I was nowhere in the area. And I was just like, okay, let me go see him. So I went in the room and I thought he was sleeping. And my grandma was like crying. I was like, hey girl, like you okay? And she was
Mhm.
like, how did you know? I was like, no what? And she was like, he passed. And I'm like, and that was so hard because again, we were so close, and to get that thought in my mind, like I need to go see him. I'm
That is
feeling when I got that thought, that's probably when he passed because he had just passed before I got there.
wow.
And after he passed, I tried to, I would lie and say he was on vacation.
Mhm.
And clearly that wasn't working. I'm like,
Been
oh
there, been there. Yeah, they're not here. They're, my friends joke because I like to hang in denial for a long time.
yeah.
So, Amanda, I don't know if you're watching this, but you just moved. My friend Amanda has lived in Texas for I don't know how long. Got her and
Hmm.
Jason probably were the first of all of us to get married. I had to be in my early to mid 20s when she got married. I am now 36. Amanda just, in my mind, moved down the street from my mother 2 years ago.
Hmm.
Amanda's probably been in Texas a decade. So I totally understand this whole hanging in denial until you're ready to process that there's a
Exactly.
reality there that you don't want to deal with yet.
And that's when after that I found a therapist. But I had just found, just a therapist near my job. I was selling cars at the time, and that was my first time ever doing therapy.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, because I feel like in the Black community, I'm not saying this has anything to do with, my family or my upbringing, but I feel like a lot of people try to downplay or like you talking to other people or talking to a therapist.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so big on mental health because I've dealt with anxiety, I've dealt with depression. Like that's just, I won't say that's normal, but it's okay to admit that,
For sure.
And I feel like people are scared to talk to other people about their problems, but this is your profession. Like you're a therapist, this is your job, this is what you're, went to school for, this is how you help us. So me going to therapy, it was really cool being able to really talk to someone that didn't know me. And because sometimes talking to people, they can really give their own opinions,
Yes.
like, oh well girl, da da da. But someone that doesn't know you, it's like, wow, hearing their process and train of thought and just getting another opinion,
Yep.
a professional opinion. Boom, there we go. Professional opinion How, taking the right steps of what to do to process different grieving. So um, that's on, like, again, with painting, it's just so calming to me because I forget about all my problems, all my troubles, anything that's going on. I just focus on painting and expressing myself through my art.
Nice. And you know what's interesting in the African American community, I do understand what you're saying. It's very, you know what, I think about how people don't like to think about this, but Dr. Joy, I forgot her last name, but she talks about post-traumatic slave syndrome. And people don't ever like to talk about the fact we have been free less time than we've been slaves. And so some of these having to be strong, having to work through things, having to hold in secrets, it was a study talking about sometimes these things get passed down through your DNA. And so you do these things and don't know why. And so I feel like sometimes we hold this stuff in because at one point in time in life, if you told any of this stuff or got help or got support, you weren't allowed to, right? There was no one to help you. There was support for other races. There wasn't support for us, right? So
Right.
therapy is a relatively new concept. When I even think about what I study in school as a therapist, there aren't any black ones. There are none. And so in the communities that I'm in, we are now talking about what does it look like to really give this service to a community who has practices culturally that may not align with these people who created this stuff, right?
Right.
So if I am a old 50 something year old Caucasian male, I may not understand what it means to give therapy to a black male who has had to have obstacles. The one thing I have noticed, and people can say what they want. The one thing I have noticed is that heterosexual straight black males, their voice is being silenced. And people may say, "Oh, I know
Mhm.
that I hear this sometimes. Oh, like they're the privileged ones of the African American community." And I think we say that so much they just quit talking. If you ask, I asked this question because a DJ on a Christian station I listen to, he said, ask the men in your life. And he's not black, but he said, ask the men in your life if this is a very awkward place for them to be in. I'm even scared to give compliments because I don't want people to take it the wrong way. Right. And
Mhm.
so I asked my brother, I said, you're 20 something years old. Do you feel like this is an awkward time in your life? He said, very. Very. He said it's to the point when he dates, when he does things. He the girl told him one time, like, so you're just not I don't know how you feel about me. You don't do anything physically. He said, because if you're not selling me out of your mouth, it's okay. I'm not doing jack. And so I think this thing of not gaining support, not expressing ourselves to this open space in therapy, we are trained to like kind of be. I always tell people I paid a lot of money in 3 years and a lot of sacrificing time for this degree. Okay. And so we are
Mhm.
trained to even silence is therapeutic. That was something I had to be trained to do. We are trained to have a neutral face, right? Because there are disorders that if your face twitches, that really sets their disorder off. Like, oh great, like they're excited that your face twitch and made a reaction, so you can't react because that could be the difference in life or death with some of these disorders. so
That
i
is true.
so I
Wow.
think you bring up a very good conversation in the African American community. What does therapy look like? What does it look like to allow us to grieve when we're really going through these things? Because for a long time we weren't allowed this type of support. And you know
Mhm.
what? This is a conversation we need to have because as therapists, we're having it. What does it look like to give therapy to the Black community? Because if it doesn't look like what we've been trained, what we've been taught, what it looks like in these textbooks, then we need to know what that looks like in the community so that we are building this connection. Because what we don't want to be doing is giving services to a group of people. I mean, they always push cultural competence. And so there's these conversations of, well, as a therapist, I'm not supposed to take anything from you, right? But what happens, Amber, when you've baked cornbread for the sixth time in my house visit and now you're feeling like I just don't want your, because in the Black community, you better not tell nobody's grandma you don't want to eat, right? So, no, thank you.
Right.
Thank you. Nothing. You keep saying that, and grandma's gonna be mad. So then you're not gonna be building that rapport for
Exactly.
family if you keep turning down grandma's food. But if you sit down, right, eat her plate of greens, she gonna tell you all the family business.
Hmm.
So if I'm taught as a therapist, you don't take anything from your clients because that's putting you a level above. But in the Black community, that's how we build connection. You know what I mean? What does that look like in the Black community? So I think this has something to do with it too. African Americans sometimes don't engage with therapy because culturally we haven't made it a practice for them to be able to engage with therapy. So what does that look like? And to be honest, you when you saw the therapist, what did that look like for you? Did you feel connected at first? Did you feel like this is kind of awkward? Did you feel like some things that were different were good, or did you feel like this therapist got you? Because I know you said something like, well, I found the therapist that was closest to my job, but is that the therapist you stuck with? And were there some things about that therapist you was like, nah, I gotta go?
So, I like to be honest.
Go ahead, please, because as therapists, we got thick skin. If they listening, then we were taught in school to take feedback. You should be straight.
Um, Again, the whole reason was I used to sell cars, so I was always busy, 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 busy. So I was like, okay, boom, I found one, 3 minutes away from my job,
Convenient.
and very convenient because I'll go on my lunch break, or I'll take an hour out of the day to go. And again, yes, it's very scary at first, because you don't know this person, and it was a Caucasian female. She was sweet, but I didn't stay there long. So my new therapist,
Thank you for your
amazing,
honesty. We need to know that because
yeah,
sometimes when they give, I'm telling you, sometimes I cringe when I see people that don't look like me give these workshops about how to approach me. And I'm like, you don't know jack.
yeah,
You cannot cook hot water or fried cornbread. We might need to have a conversation. You know what I'm saying? About our culture. So yes, I appreciate you being honest and saying she was sweet. Didn't feel
she
comfortable.
was, and I feel like what kind of like put me the wrong way of her. Like when I was just talking about stuff, and I was just like, oh, like I told her, I was like, yeah, my mom is like my best friend, my grandma, my dad, like they're like my best friends. And she was like, oh, you have a lot of best friends, and I'm like, this is my family. Like, we're just close.
In my mind, I'm thinking we call everybody auntie, whether they're related or not, right? We're close knit family. That's the one thing
Very.
I got when I worked at Morehouse. Dr. Wright said, oftentimes therapists will say, well, what are the mom and dad doing? He said, but guess what? In the Black community, it's mom and dad may not be there. Because I even think about my cousins, how they would come home from school, go to my grandmother's house because she was closer,
Mhm,
right? So
mhm.
it's the extended family, not just mom and dad. Who picks up, right? It's auntie.
Exactly.
Who feeds them dinner? It's Uncle Rebus. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And so it's like, what does the holistic aspect of the Black family look like? And if you're
Yeah,
making these comments in therapy, that's a turnoff. And please, I'm gonna
yeah.
let Amber finish. If you do not like your therapist, you allowed to get a new one.
You
You do
can
not
go. You
quit
can
on
go.
therapy, quit on that therapist and tell them because they cannot get better if you do not say. Let me tell you something. I have no sympathy for a therapist getting feedback because I've had kids slam laptops in my face and say I like my last therapist better. And I know I'm a good therapist, okay?
You are.
I know I'm good, and I told the kid, just tell me the truth. I got thick skin. Oh, you want the truth? And they had twice. This same kid slammed the laptop. Next, I'm just sorry. You told me to do these couple skills. My last therapist told me to do these couple skills. I like them better.
Oh yeah.
You gotta have thick skin because if
Yeah.
I didn't know that, then how do I help this kid cope? If I'm giving them skills that trigger them, how do I help them work through that trigger, right? And then give them new
Right.
skills that are separate of that therapist. So now they have an even wider toolbox. Yes, I have the tools this therapist taught me because I love that therapist. But until I'm ready, I got these tools over here to use that are not connected to that therapist, right? So I
Mhm.
think that is important. What you said was she was sweet, but her commentary, her
Yeah,
words.
it's just like you said, the wording. Because again, I was already nervous, and they asking all these questions, and yeah, for her to say that, because I'm just like I'm just really close with my family. We're like this. We're super tight. So I have a separate relationship with everybody. Like me and my grandma, like that's my best friend. My mom, that's my best friend. My dad, my granddaddy, like we all have separate relationships. But I look at like they're my family. But
We're close.
anyway,
Right, we're
we're
close.
super close, and for her to say that, it was just like, girl. And so now
How
I have
long? I have a question. How long after she made that comment did you stick with her?
not that
Did you
long.
end immediately, or was like 2 or 3 sessions? I'm guessing
I
two.
mean, honestly, I think I only went for 3 sessions because since it was grief, you get. I think my insurance gave me like maybe 3 sessions, honestly, 3 or 4 sessions anyway. So yeah, I just didn't renew it. Once that was over with, I just didn't renew it. And I stopped going to therapy for a while. And then I ended up last year, I found a new black female therapist, and she's so amazing. And I feel like now it's no excuse, honestly, for people to say, "Oh, I can't go to therapy." With COVID, it's virtual. Like I can talk to her on the phone or on camera. So I feel like it should be no excuse. Like if you need to go to therapy, this is your time. This is to do. If you don't want to go in, you can. You can. It's no excuse. And I just feel like everybody, you don't know until you go, but a lot of people have deep rooted issues,
Yeah.
especially it can stem from family or situations. Some things happen when you were younger, and you carry that baggage, and you just keep piling stuff on top of it. And until you can unleash that baggage and actually
Right.
talk to and get a professional,
Right.
not just your homegirl, your homeboy, whatever,
I guess
it's
it does
cool.
not count when people say, "Oh my God, yeah, everybody calls me. I should be a therapist." All right, well, you gonna get this 3 year degree because I used to think the same thing before I went to school for it, and it is totally different. The skills, like you
Really
think you're actively
understanding.
listening, right? You think you're actively listening until what's interesting is until you can't repeat back what people are saying, or when you start to repeat back. This is the skill I teach everybody, hands down, as a communication coach. This is the first skill I taught as a therapist. Is the first skill I teach as a communication coach. When someone is talking to you, you think you're a good listener, ask them, repeat back to them what you thought they said. When they
Mhm.
talk to you, repeat back to them what you thought they said and see how many times you're right. That will teach you if you're really, one, conveying the meaning you want, and two, taking away the meaning that people are trying to get you to come across. Because we operate off of that lens and that meaning. Whatever we
Yeah.
think we took away from that conversation, our actions come next. And so that's summarizing what, you know what? So what I heard you say was, and repeat back what you thought
Mhm.
and see how many times you're right. And so I think Amber says some really important things about therapy, about taking that step, about when you don't like that therapist, go renewing somewhere else, finding a black
Mhm.
therapist. That should shout out to your therapist. I don't know who she is, but shout her out.
Yes.
She is
I want to shout out. Her name is Shauna. I love you, Shauna. Like when I talk to her, she's really amazing. And what I love so much about
does she have
now,
on her caseload? Does she have did she have like a number or a website that people can maybe find her? Because it's
so
hard.
that's all I was going to explain. I love now with technology, you can just Google and you can see the people's profile, you can see their picture, you can read about them. So again, with it being COVID, I just Googled my insurance and therapists under that insurance. That's like if you have insurance, like I don't even pay for therapy. I'm so thankful. That's why I'm like, it's no excuse.
And see,
You
with
know,
COVID, what people don't know is, I don't know if they're still doing this. At one point, insurance companies were covering the copay for therapy during COVID. So I don't know if some of them were still doing it. Some stopped, but some of them were covering the copay. So go in and see if they are covering the copay. Now, I will say some therapists don't take insurance, which is part of me dragging my feet, Medicaid purgatory. But also, I wasn't accepting Medicaid personally. I was working with a company that was. And
mm,
so it was a little rough when people don't show up and you can't do anything about it. So you're kind of having to chase, some people down. But then you get this caseload that's phenomenal. You don't have to chase nobody. So it's kind of hit or miss. But
right.
I like what you said about you have insurance. Go in and Google it. They have these profiles now for people that you can see their profile about them, what they do and specialize in. So that means that I need to go create one for my coaching business because I
Yes.
didn't think of that Google now has personal profile. Like if you Google me, definitely stuff comes up. The things that I've done, Google, my clients found me. Okay, my kids found me, so I'm definitely Google. They thought I was, oh Lord, the Real Housewives of the Potomac. I think that's the show. Monique Samuels.
Yes.
They thought I was her, and I'm like, dude, I live here. But three people told me I kind of look like her. Maybe I favor her, maybe I don't. I don't know. But that was so they Googled me to see if I was really her, and I was just masquerading as a therapist.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, Amber, I know I don't want to keep you long. This conversation is so good though, because it's so needed about therapy, making those choices, how you
Mm.
work through this grieving process individualistically, that you're letting no one kind of dictate that, and how all of this comes full circle to bringing you to your purpose, to the place that you seem to be thriving in, the art, the business, the entrepreneurship. And so how, last question, and then you got to confess something. So in the entrepreneurship, how do you balance all of that with life?
Oh, thank God for therapy. I go once a week. Okay. Thank God for therapy. Um, Again, it can be a lot. Life is it's hard when you have your own business and you're really doing everything by yourself. Of course, shout out to my sister, love her to death. I'm happy. But, she's in high school. She just draws. Like, I have to do financing, bookkeeping. I have to do social media. I have to do my website. Like, I created my website by myself. I have to do flyers. I have to post, 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 post. It's a lot to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But I know at the end of the day, to me, it's more about the freedom. And it's not, I mean, the money's good. But, being able to just travel, get up and travel when I want to. Of course, stupid COVID is messing that up. But, it's just the freedom being able to do what I want to do and spend more time with my family if I want to. But yeah, honestly, that keeps me going is therapy because I have a professional that I can, vent and scream to. And my therapy, she's a business coach too. So I love that it doesn't always have to be about problems. I can talk to her about business stuff and she can just give me some advice, some good tips. So that's another thing to look for too when you're searching for your therapist. Like, find someone that has different avenues that is more than just sad stuff. We can talk about, business.
And sometimes you need that, right? So I have a couple of my clients that I do life coaching with. Some of them do therapy, but they come to me for dating and communication. So I have found myself actually coaching entrepreneurs in this dating space because the dating space is really different. And so I have this system and process that I kind of work them through, but ultimately it boils down to communication and what that looks like and how you're navigating that space utilizing communication. So I think you're right about, people say niche down or niche down, whatever you want to, whichever. I've heard it heard it said both ways, niche or niche, whichever one you want to use, right? But specifically, sometimes you need these specific things. So it's like Amber said, yeah, I needed a therapist to process the grief, but I also like the fact that I have that business aspect with her. And so you may need a therapist or coach that's versatile. You may need both, right? Because some of my clients go do therapy and then I do the coaching aspect, right? But at the time, I also had therapeutic clients that I was processing trauma and suicidal thoughts with while I was over here coaching for dating and communication. And so you have these facets where you can kind of find people that do these multiple functioning things. I mean, my consultant business is Shereen and Danny. So we take life coaching clients. We're not doing therapy over there. So, but we're doing communication, coaching. We actually do grief, planning, organization, me and my business partner. So you do sometimes need these people to do multiple things. So, all right, Amber, what is your confession? My roommate definitely threw me under the bus. Like, hey, you remember that time in college?
And I'm really trying to think of like a confession. I'm really thinking.
High school, 20s.
Because it has to be something no one else doesn't know, right?
Or it could be something few people know. So in the case of my last guest, Candace, me, her, and Brooke knew. The three dudes that were there knew, but we didn't talk about it outside of us. But we knew, like, it happened. So her confession was that one time we decided we all three liked these guys that lived at one house, and her confession was we just popped up at their house, and they were on dates, and we popped up at their house, said hey to the dates. And the dates was like, do y'all know these girls? And they're like, yeah. They're like, y'all gonna put them out? No. They just sat on the couch and grinning, looking stupid. Let us get around their house, drink their stuff like they. And she's like, I don't think. She's like, and there were no repercussions. Like, they never put us out. They never said anything. Like, we came over the next week. Like, so that was her confession as she threw me on the bus. And our mom didn't ignore that story. Like, we were successful. Like, we date great men now. So
I'm trying, because I know I can give some good stories. I'm just really trying to think long and hard.
Give us a good one. What's a good one?
Mm.
What's the one that's at the top of your head you're trying not to throw out there?
I'm I'm really trying to think. So I'm like, I really don't be doing nothing,
Ah,
but um, ah, because I want it to be good. Oh, what can I say?
or it can be funny too.
Oh my gosh, I really should have been more prepared at thinking of what.
So this is so high. This is a lesson to the guests. I'm really gonna ask this question. I put it on the questionnaire, but you guys don't think I'm gonna ask it. But I do ask every
And it's like
question.
I'm trying to look at my desk. I'm like, okay, what ideas can like, um, I'm really
Dating
trying to.
confession, friend confess. Like my she literally she did. She confessed that we went over there, sitting around their house. She's like, and they're sitting on the couch with these stupid grins on their face, and the girls
Um,
are looking uncomfortable. Like,
oh,
yes,
boom.
there you
Okay,
go.
okay. I because a lot of people I don't think really know what really happened, but this will be a good confession.
Yes.
Okay, in 2018, I broke my ankle.
Mm.
Uh, it's how I broke it is the problem.
Go on and tell it, girl. How'd you break that ankle?
So it was my cousin Xavier. He had just graduated from SCAD, and we were like having a little party at my aunt's house. But my house lived down. I was down the street, and I was literally renting a house. So I told all his friends like, "Oh, come back to my house. You know, we can turn up, have a good time." So I had a stripper pole at the time. Um, Disclaimer: not a stripper, okay? But you know, pole. I love pole is a great workout. I loved it. I, anyway. So I've been drinking. My cousin's graduated from SCAD. That's great.
Oh,
And
Xavier. Scared is
yes, and he actually went to the SCAD in Is it Tokyo?
Oh,
Oh, yeah. Like his last year, he got accepted, and he went up there for his last year, his senior year. But of course, it was SCAD in Savannah. So yeah, so I'm like, this is dope. So we turned it up, girl. I'm like, so all his friends, they're like, oh, Amber, it's guys and girls. I've known them since they were little. And then it's like, oh, Amber, let me see some tricks. Cause I went to pole school and stuff. So like, I really know what I'm
that
doing.
is a thing. One of my friends goes, pole class is a whole exercise class. So it
It
is.
is. It really is. Shout out to Fit Candy Studios in Conyers. Cause that's where I went to Pole University. Key, she's the owner. Amazing.
Nice.
So I'm up there. So I inverted, which is where you flip upside down. Mind you, I was drinking. So I flip upside down, then I do a spin, and when I spun around the pole, I landed and I heard a pop. I didn't fall. I heard a pop, but it sounded
Oh,
like
you heard a pop.
because it's like I thought it was when you crack your wrist or something.
Yeah.
It was that's all I heard, but again, I just landed hard because I was swinging. I just landed. So afterwards, I'm still going. Like I'm still flipping. I'm still going. And
Because sometimes when you're drinking, you don't feel anything. If anybody doesn't know that, like there's
girl,
that you don't feel when you hurt yourself a lot of times. And two, if somebody ever tells you, "Oh, I did something because I was drinking," your inhibitors are low, meaning that the thing that tells you don't say that it could be the truth or don't do that, even if it's usually the truth,
mm-hmm,
right? But your inhibitors keep you from doing crazy stuff, right? They keep your id in
mm-hmm.
check. It's like no, 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 ego, one of them. Whichever one is like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it now. It keeps that in check. So when you're drinking, that's low. So you usually do things you want to do, and you necessarily doesn't mean that you didn't want to do it. It meant that your inhibitors are now there's nothing to stop you. So keep going.
So I ended up laying on the floor, and I'm just like, I'm telling my cousin, I'm like, Zay, I think something's not right. And he was like, oh, what you mean? He was like, oh, you probably just popped it, like you're okay. So I go in the kitchen, I FaceTime my mom, and I'm like, something's not right. She was like, what did you do? I was like, I was on the pole. I was trying to show them some moves, and I was drinking. Girl, that thing was broke, and so I had to go because it started swelling up. The alcohol is going away. I'm feeling the
Now
pain,
you're feeling the pain.
and thank God, my cousin, and all his friends were there. They were so sweet, and so they were able because I had stairs. I had stairs that went straight upstairs. So
Mhm.
literally, I'm on my knees climbing up the stairs, and his friends are trying to help me, and my foot is just, my ankle just dangling.
No.
So thankfully, it was like a Sunday we did this, and I got an appointment Monday the next day. And so, of course, the doctor's like, "So what happened?" I was like, I fell down the stairs. I tripped over my brother's dog." And
I
they're
was
like,
not telling you I was on a pole, inverted, twisting around.
"But you know what?" Because I was like, "Okay, what really happened?" I was like,
Because see, people don't know is that they automatically think when you lie about stuff like this, somebody's abusing you. So she could have been thinking that if you were dating or married, somebody was
"I
abusing
got pushed down the stairs or something."
you. Somebody threw you down this right. So you almost
I'm
had
like, "No." So again, that's like, I didn't fall. I literally just spun around, and how my foot landed, I just landed too hard. That's like, what's crazy. Nobody knew I hurt myself until it started. Like, the alcohol went down, I started feeling in pain. People just saw I was tired. I was just chilling out. I'm like, that's like, nobody knew that I really broke my ankle.
like you
That
broke
really,
it, and it's not even like twist or sprain. Like you broke
because
your ankle.
I sprained my ankle multiple times. Growing up, I'm really tall, so
Right, I feel that. Yeah. Did you play sports too?
no,
Oh, I was
I'm
going to say,
little.
anytime I played sports, I for sure sprained my ankle multiple times.
Multiple
Never
times,
broke
yeah.
it. Yeah, but multiple times sprained it. Yeah.
Breaking it. And what sucks, this was when I worked at Honda and was selling cars, so I was out of work for 3 months.
Oh, because you can't walk around, or you got crutches, and they felt. Was it because they felt like you couldn't sell cars, or because you broke it, you really couldn't hobble around like that?
I couldn't do anything. Thank God, a family friend, he was able to give me a scooter, like a knee scooter.
Yeah.
Girl, you should see how creative I had to get with having a broken ankle. But when I tell you something, I lived my best life when my ankle's broken. My mom took me to Disney World, went to Magic Kingdom. We got to cut all the lines for free because I had my boot on.
That's a temporary disability.
Well, I tell you, and she got me a wheelchair and pushed me around the park. I went to Miami. I was on a beach, with my cast on. Like, I'm like, I'm out of work for 3 months.
Yeah.
I live my best life.
You better have lived your best life. That is hilarious that you broke your
So,
ankle, spinning around on a pole inverted. That is hilarious. Because
so
it's those freak accidents that happen. Like I burned myself with a penny one time. So, and nowhere close to breaking my ankle. But I just think about how I was earning a shirt and I laid on the bed. I'm like, oh my God, this blanket is warm. Oh, it's getting hotter. Blanket's usually cool. What is going on? And finally I hopped off the bed and it's a whole penny. I had a round freaking bruise. When you burn yourself, I had a brown burn on my leg.
Oh my God.
It was hilarious though because
That is a freak accident though,
right. So that like you being on a pole, I think of things like that. That those make the craziest stories because it's like, who would have thought that landing too hard after you've sprained your ankle for years,
after I've gone to pole school, I know what I'm doing, but again, don't drink and twirl and pole, ladies and gentlemen. Do it.
Sipping pole.
Don't do it.
Well, Amber, I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to you today about your paint factory. So tell them where they can find you.
So I have my own website. It's www.thepaintfactoryllc.com. Also, you can follow me on Instagram at the.paintfactory. On Facebook, you can just look me up, the Paint Factory ATL. Because it's actually another paint factory, but it's actual painting business, like where they sell gallons of paint. But it's not even in Georgia. It's in a total different state. So sometimes when you look it up on Facebook, that's why you have to search ATL.
Okay.
To find me, because you'll find another paint factory. But yeah, Instagram, the.paint factory.
Nice. Instagram, Google, and you have your own website. Well,
you can Google me. Yeah, just Google the Paint Factory, and I'll come right up. Shout out to Google. Got a lot of customers from Google.
Nice. Well, that's something to consider.
Google, yeah.
You got a lot of things, so that's on SEO is like really huge. So shout out to Google. So awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, Amber, for having us, guys. We will definitely catch you next week. Next week, So upcoming, I have Kiara, who's going to tell us her phenomenal testimony. She's an education major. And then I'm going to have Teresa Wright Johnson. I feel like that's her whole name. And we're going to talk wife, motherhood, and all things open about how to run these kind of places in life. She is a part of the Biz Boss Mom community. She is the leader. She is the founder. And so we will have her on. Later on, I will have a male therapist on, Mr. Stevens, who is doing some phenomenal therapeutic work from with the Promised Land, which is his company. So I will probably have him on February talking love, relationships, and all things therapeutic. So guys, I love you. See you next time, Amber. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Bye.